candid conversations with wedding professionals as they share their stories, insights, and tips from inside the wedding industry. We'll chat about how to be authentic and that it's okay not to be perfect or run your business like someone else's Instagram. Let's dive into the privilege it is to serve our clients and discover the talented creatives that make up our community. When we share what we know and who we are, we better serve our couples as a wedding day team, as well as each other. Simply put, Be Fabbo. Now here's your host, Bobby Brinkman.
Welcome to Wedding Wednesday podcast, listeners. Hope everybody's week's been going well. Right now, during the current recording of this episode, we are in the middle of May. So most of us have been through our May weddings, and most of us are wrapping up our spring wedding season. And for a lot of people across the country, I know we have listeners from across the United States, many of you guys are just getting ready to start your season. So hopefully you've enjoyed listening along. We're well into 20-some-odd episodes already recorded, and man, do we have some great interviews coming up, including today's interview, but also in the next couple weeks, I've got some wonderful guest industry leaders coming on to chat. So I'm trying to find a little bit of something for everybody, no matter what newbie or seasoned veteran that you are in the industry. I'm just trying to find some new things to share and some insights and some stories, and I am all about wanting to share and inspire, motivate, educate, and celebrate all of us in the wedding industry, and it is my goal and my hope that through these candid conversations, you can pick up a tidbit here and there, and maybe just not feel that you're alone and that you're going through some things too, and that not every wedding is perfect, and there is some ups and downs, and running a creative business and life sometimes gets a little bit hectic and crazy, but hopefully you've been able to pick up a tip and enjoyed hearing somebody else's story, and that's really what I love. I love hearing how people got in the industry, why they got in the industry, and the impact that they think they're making, and little by little, all the impacts that we make. I mean, again, I say it often, but we are all privileged to serve in this industry and to serve our couples. So hopefully you guys can pop over to iTunes and leave us a review, even if it's a 1-star, but hopefully we're doing a little bit better than that, but I can take it. All about being authentic, and I want to continue learning and improving. So leave us a review on iTunes so that other listeners, engaged couples, and other industry people can find us a little bit easier and maybe be inspired. And by you coming on and sharing your stories, I want you to know that you are inspiring people. I am out and about, and I'm hearing people come up to me saying they're enjoying the podcast and different episodes are impacting them. So trying to bring you a wide range of guests and topics. So if there's something that you want to know about or hear about, or a guest that you want me to try to reach out to, remember you can do that over at info@Bobby, B-O-B-B-I, Brinkman, B-R-I-N-K-M-A-N, photography.com, and send an email over to Tina there, and she will get you on the list and help find whoever you need or whatever you need. And remember that you can always text me too, and reach out to me at bobbybrinkman@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to get back to you and help you with your search of a guest or on a topic. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thanks for following along. It means the world to me that you do. Education and teaching and sharing are all such a huge part of who I am, and I want to continue being the wedding industry cheerleader and cheering us all on and bringing us together. So today's episode is all about wedding videography. We're going to talk about the change in the industry, the way the industry, where it stands in the industry. I think it's one of the areas in our wedding industry that has changed the most in the last couple of years. I think couples are now definitely finding ways to invest in having a videographer along for the day. And I can tell you from a wedding photographer standpoint, I love having a qualified, professional, respectful video team along. I mean, and I think we all have some horror stories on some Uncle Bobs that we had to deal with. But when you get somebody like our guest and their company, it's a world of difference in working with a professional artist. And they capture the moving part, and I get to capture the stills. And together, that's a collective story for our couples, for them to have for years and years and years. So I think we work hand in hand well together, and I do think it's an investment that couples need to make to have both the videographer and the photographer along. So today I have the honor of speaking to David Skaggs. He is a wedding filmmaker based out of St. Louis. David has over 200 weddings in his career. And when I was working with David back in St. Louis on a couple of weddings, he was working for another large company that was doing a variety of different things. And I am so thrilled and so excited to find out that he has decided to leave there and open his own creative business, Coterie Creative, and it means small group shared interest. Tina will put in the show notes exactly how to get a hold of David, and we'll talk to him about naming his company that as well. But it's a small boutique wedding film, and I think he's going to do wonderful, wonderful things, being able to be on his own, being able to take the kind of clients that appreciate his artistic style and clients that, just get him instead of running through one of the wedding mill production companies per se. So I want to thank him for joining us today. I know we're all busy, and I want to thank you guys for hanging out with us today. So without further ado, let's head over to the interview. Everybody, please make welcome David Skaggs. All right, listeners, here we go. We're sitting down with David Skaggs. So David, welcome to the podcast. I'm super, super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited too. This has been something I've been waiting for the last couple of weeks since we talked. So I'm really excited.
Right. And we're going to dive into, why it's really important that new entrepreneurs, per se, get their voice heard and get out and share. And, I'm really thrilled that the listeners are going to hear the enthusiasm and excitement and hopefully drive a few others to not be afraid to take those steps, in this industry, especially to start their own business. So before we get too far, remind our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you ended up in the wedding industry.
So my name is David Skaggs. I am a St. Louis-based wedding filmmaker. I have been shooting weddings since I think I was 23. I shot my first one. I was living in Kansas City and had somebody come up to me and was like, have you ever shot a wedding before? And I said, no, I just graduated college like 3 minutes ago. So no, I hadn't. I was shooting on a Canon 60D at the time. I was using a 50 mil 1.8, the nifty 50, and a stock kit lens. And I just went. I didn't have any meetings with the bride and groom. The photographer kind of set everything up. He was the one who came to me, and I went and shot my first wedding. And then from there, kind of partnered up with some people and realized that I really, really enjoyed it. And it felt really like a documentary to me, like a mini documentary. And that was something I was really always interested in. And I just kind of ran with it from there. And, I'm 30 now. I think I've shot probably close to 250 weddings since then. And, it's a ton of fun. I love every single second of doing it. I knew a ton of people when I was in school and when I was working in the corporate and the commercial world that, would shoot a wedding here and there. And, they would talk about it like it was, almost kind of like a second rate kind of gig for them. And I never really understood that because I loved it. I would take 10 hours on a wedding day over 4 hours on a set any day of the week. And, I don't know. I just enjoy it.
So when I need to ask you because, through our conversations and when we have other guests on here, that simple question, did you go to college and major in fine art, major in videography, commercial photography? What did you go to get a degree in that allows you to now be creative?
So my degree is in broadcast media. I went to the University of Central Missouri. When I graduated high school, I wanted to be on the radio. That was something that I had thought that I wanted to do. I had Sirius satellite radio, and I really enjoyed listening, not to the shock jocks, but I really enjoyed listening to the people who could kind of control what music they wanted to listen to. And I was super into it. And that's actually what dictates a lot of my films is the music selection. And I went to school and I volunteered at the radio station, and it was a soft rock radio station, Five for Fighting, like just that kind of stuff. And I was 18 and grew up playing hockey and really enjoyed movies and stuff like that. So that wasn't the kind of music I was into. And I just couldn't really get behind it. I couldn't really enjoy my time while volunteering there. So one of my professors actually came up to me and he said straight up, I was 18, maybe 19 years old. And he said, if you can't do this, if you can't work at a radio station and not like the music that you're listening to, then this isn't the career for you. And that really kind of hit home for me. And that scared me. Actually, at 19 years old, I was like, for the last 2 years, all I've wanted to do is be on the radio. And I thought this was something that I wanted to do. And to hear somebody who worked in that industry tell me like, maybe it's not for you, really kind of set me back for a second, and I kind of just finished up my gen ed classes and stuff like that over the next year. And one day my parents, they kind of, I was bouncing around major to major. I was like, maybe I want to do criminal justice. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to do that. Who knows? You're being a kid. And my parents, thank God, were like, hey, you need to stick with broadcasting for right now. At least take 2 broadcasting classes a semester so you don't just waste 2 years and you're now 25 graduating school, So they kept me in these broadcasting classes. So I took Introduction to Broadcast Journalism. I took, mass communication law, stuff like that. And then I eventually took a class called Broadcast Copywriting with my professor. Her name was Shauna Troff, and she ended up being my student advisor. And it was a class that basically all we did was we came up with advertisement ideas and huge kind of like script writing, production, all of this kind of beginning to end of making these advertisement campaigns. And I fell in love with it. And I immediately realized, like, I'd always been a huge movie fan, even as a kid. Like, my 16th birthday, my parents were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want my car keys and I want $20 to go and see a movie at Ronnie's. And that's what I did. And I went the entire night and I just movie hopped, the whole night. And when I got into that broadcast copywriting class, a friend of mine, his name was Mark Muller, came up to me and said, hey, why don't you volunteer at the TV station on campus? It was a PBS affiliate that was all student-run producers. And he's like, why don't you volunteer here, and get a camera in your hands and see if you like this? So I did, and they put a camera in my hands. Literally, I went down there on a Friday. They had a camera in my hand the next day. And it just, it felt right. It was a huge beta cam. It was in no way anything that was like, that I got to really like get real world experience out of. I've never used one before. And I'd never even used a beta cam in my life, So they put this camera in my hand and started having me do magazine style pieces. So they were 5-minute interview and B-roll based weekly like stories for TV that got broadcast on the air. And I was, 22 years old and 21 years old. And I was in a fraternity at the time. And as soon as I got down there, I quit everything else I was doing. Like, as soon as they put that camera in my hand, I left the fraternity that I was in. I moved out of a frat house and moved into my own apartment. I really dove deep into film and broadcasting. And I did a lot of live to tape stuff like in studios, and I dove right into it and got a camera as a graduation gift, got that Canon 60D that I was telling you about earlier as a graduation gift from my grandmother, and just hit the ground running with it. So long story short, I feel like Kevin Smith right now. I'm just rambling on a 45-minute.
But what it is think about this. You definitely found your voice, but it was your voice behind a camera instead of on air or on the radio station. So that's just inspiring. And I do think that that's how many of our creatives are and how we are. I think we're just wired differently. There's just, there's something about us that looks differently. And, you can relate to as well as our photographer listeners. We see the world through this little square that we're used to looking in. And I think it does keep us focused on what we want to do. And that's a wonderful path. And it goes again to, hey, here's somebody who was honest enough to take you aside and give you honest criticism early on, so that otherwise it would have never provoked you. And along with your parents to force you and say, hey, look, give this a try, get it out of your system. But if those things wouldn't have lined up, you would have never been able to volunteer at that TV station, which that has to be such a basic ground. And I always remind everybody that weddings are telling a story. I mean, we're the historians of the day, the who, what, where, when, and everything surroundings. So by starting off volunteering at this college, you really did fine tune your skills into learning how to tell a story that just wasn't a wedding per se, but you were able to fine tune your story. So fast forward to us and getting out of doing the college volunteer thing. How did you get your start in weddings, and when did you kind of know, hey man, I'm going to stay really busy for a couple of years working for somebody else?
So I was living in Kansas City, Missouri. I was like 22 years old, and I had a friend from St. Louis who was kind of like, we'd kind of lost touch for about a year and a half, but we were still Facebook friends. And I saw he had posted this Facebook status at the time that was like, just applied for a cinematographer position at blank, blank, blank company. And I was kind of, at that time, I was young and I was cocky. And I mean, we all are at 22. And I was like, well, I'm a better cinematographer than you are. So I'm going to apply to that company too and see what happens. And I ended up getting a call back after like, I don't know, it was later on that day. I got a call back from the owner of the company. And he was like, hey, man, I saw, your application. I've seen your demo reel, all this kind of stuff. Like, would you be willing to come in for an interview? And I was like, yeah, I can on like Saturday or Sunday. And he was like, well, it's a wedding company, man. So like we're doing stuff on Saturdays. And I was like, well, I'm living in a different city. So I eventually had to be back in St. Louis and met up with him and had shown him that wedding that I spoke about earlier because I had happened to shoot that 2 weeks before the interview and sat down and brought in, I think it was like 45 seconds of the final edit and showed it to him on my iPad. And he, basically was super excited. At the time, that company was basically training photographers to be videographers. So I was one of the only people on the team at that time to come in solely as a videographer. I didn't have any real experience as a photographer. I only looked at things from video. So, they never had to teach me to turn the camera from portrait mode to landscape mode. They never had to really kind of worry about that. And I kind of came on and I worked with a couple of people. Claire Bira is one that really kind of took me under her wing real early. She's got a company right now called Image Clarity that does photography and videography, and they're amazing. And she kind of took me under her wing, and I shot with her for, I want to say like 6 to 8 months. She and I partnered on a bunch of video projects together, and, just kind of ran with it from there. And then I eventually was traveling back and forth from Kansas City to St. Louis to shoot these weddings. I would leave town on Friday night, get back into St. Louis by 10:30 o'clock, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock. I would crash my parents' house for a couple of hours, and then I would get up in the morning and I would go and get the gear, and I would shoot a wedding for 10, 12 hours and make myself a little bit of money and come home. And, at 22 years old, you're getting paid to work in the industry. You're getting paid every other week to shoot, not use your equipment. So, I mean, I was, like I said, at the time, I was still shooting on a Canon 60D. So I was able to get my hands on 5D Mark II, 5D Mark III, 50 mil 1.2s, these kind of lenses that at 22 years old, I didn't have $1,100 to drop on a lens like that. Right. I was barely making ends meet, so to be paid $300 for a day to shoot with equipment that I would never get to use was amazing.
Well, and it beats working at McDonald's, where I'm sure half your friends were working, flipping a burger. Right, and I mean, right, and even if they made more than you were still doing your passion and what was fueling you, per se, even though a lot of that money was probably going to your gas tank traveling back and forth. But I think, again, that just goes to, you had that instinct desire to keep pushing and doing what you wanted to do. And working for another company and working underneath somebody is, as I applaud you, and I have other interviews that we have done, I applaud everybody that doesn't just pick up whatever it is and say, hey, I've done this, I can now be this and hang a shingle. So I applaud you for working with a company and getting your feet wet, even though I do know that you had a lot of the mad skills already, but it's the mad skills of what goes on a wedding day. And I think people forget that. You may be the greatest florist, or you may be the greatest song singer or entertainer, but the logistics that go on a wedding day are so much more than what the average person knows. We in the industry know that there's all these moving parts. So I applaud you for working with a company and getting your training. So when you were there, when you were doing weddings, about how many weddings were you doing a year when you were working for this other company?
Oh, man. So when I was a contractor for that company, when I was 23 to 24, 22, 24, I was probably going, I don't know, 2 a month, maybe 3 a month, driving back and forth between Kansas City and St. Louis. And then eventually it became Quincy, Illinois and St. Louis, because I moved up there to work for a TV station, and I would drive back in. So I was probably doing 2 to 3 a month for them. Not a whole lot in the dead seasons. Obviously, January through March is pretty dead, and August is slow, as we all know. But yeah, I was doing like 2 to 3 a month, and then eventually was offered the role of video manager there. So I was offered full-time work, and I was shooting at least one a weekend, if not multiples. I think by the time I started counting them, I was up into the 40s and 50s a year. So I remember I want to say it was October of 2017, I triple shot every single weekend. Wow. So I would shoot Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every single weekend. Just because we were so busy. I mean, and I was one of the lead cinematographers, and I couldn't in good conscience take a weekend off and have a team of shooters out under me, out working, like I was very much a lead by example kind of a person. And like what you were saying about about working for somebody else, that was something that was taught to me as a kid. I don't come from this kind of a background. As I said, I wanted to get into radio when I was younger. My parents have been in the injection molding industry since I was literally a baby. My dad was a plant manager at a huge injection molding plant in St. Louis, and my grandfather was the president there. And then after my grandfather passed away, my dad started his own business. So hard working and putting your nose to the grindstone and really learning from other people was instilled in me really early as a kid. So like I never really looked at it as, okay, I just got to pay my dues until I can start my own. It was, okay, I have to learn what I need to learn and work for people who have already been where I am. Why learn from your own mistakes? Why not learn from somebody else? Don't make those mistakes. Have somebody explain to you like, hey, you could potentially be making a mistake right now. I recommend not doing this.
Right.
So like I had always set out. I never set out to start my own company. That was never something that was kind of in my mind. I was always just out to make the best product I possibly could for clients, and when my style started to develop and when I started to kind of come into my own as a cinematographer is when people started to recognize that and people started to see the work that I was producing and the kind of a worker that I was, both in the work ethic that I brought to the projects and also the fact that like I was a team player, and I tried to help everybody out on the wedding day that I could. People really seem to enjoy that. So that's kind of where working for myself came from, was just a couple of people I worked with on one of those weekends where I was tripling, or where I was doing a wedding every single weekend. I worked with a couple of people who were like, hey, as soon as you decide to kind of go out on your own, like we'd love to refer you, like we love your work and we love working with you. So as soon as you decide to go out on your own, like let us know and tell us, we're just waiting. Like we love recommending the company, but like a lot of times we'll tell people like, hey, try and get David with this company, and that was really great to hear as a cinematographer and as an individual person, but it was kind of hard to hear as the video manager of that company, because I have loyalty to that company. I worked there for 7 years.
Right. I was just going to say, you were wearing two hats. So not only were you going out in the daytime being creative, you also had to come back and do all the mundane office work. And I do think that is, I think for the lack of a better term, we in the industry, we know them as, wedding mills, and that can just be, herd them in as cattle, get them in, get them out. And there's nothing wrong with those companies. They all they all offer a service. But I think that they all know that you're going to get one or two of those rare people that are going to stand out like you did, because it's got to be hard for people like you. So was that one of the moving points, is where you realized that people were asking for you to be their cinematographer and tell their story, and you were in a position where I just couldn't take your wedding because I had to farm out Susie or Tommy, and you were kind of just stuck. And so share with our listeners, if you can, that moment that you really knew, hey, you know what? I really do have something I can offer. It's time for me to branch out and hang my own shingle.
Yeah, I think, tracing it back, I think I could trace it back to one specific weekend. I remember it was September 30th, 2017. I remember that weekend specifically for multiple reasons. So at the company that we had, we would send out 3 teams a weekend, or a day, I guess, like really. We would send anywhere out between 3 and 5 teams on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We blacked out at 3 weddings a day is basically what we kind of blacked it out at. And there was a mistake that I had made way early in my career as that video manager, where I didn't double book, but we had 1 spot available and 2 people fighting for it. And both of those clients were very, very nice. And I remember I liked both of them. And I remember talking to the owner of the company and saying, look, we could do this. We could take 1 extra wedding that weekend. It's not until September. We have all year to bring in a new class of cinematographers, to train people up. We can handle this. And it got down to the weekend, and the 2 brides that we had booked for the last slot, both thought that I was going to be their cinematographer. And I wasn't anybody's cinematographer that day because my sister was actually getting married in Branson. So my sister was one of our video clients. So we were sending a team to Branson with me, not even working, and had 3 other teams in St. Louis that had to shoot as well. So the disappointment I remember, her name was Erica. I had multiple phone calls with her, and like just hearing disappointment that I wasn't her cinematographer really kind of hurt. And it hurt me that day, even being there for my sister and helping out in that case, because obviously I picked up a camera at her wedding. Right. Why wouldn't I? I had it down there. Exactly. So, and I just remember that moment being like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want to have the good parts of that feeling of, oh my God, I'm so excited that you're my cinematographer. I can't wait to work with you. I can't wait to see what you produce. I wanted that for every single client that I did, not 1/3 of the clients that I met with, because I would have meetings with every single client. And then we would assign cinematographers and assign editors and assign colorists and all these kinds of things later. And I just knew that I wanted to be the main creative on all of the films that I produce moving forward. And I can't do that when we're doing 120 a year. I knew I don't have that kind of time. Even if I was able to turn wedding films around in a day and a half or 2 days, there was no possible way that I could do that. I would be burned out so quickly. So I decided from then, that season, I really kind of started thinking about what I wanted, which was to make wedding films in the style that I wanted to make and be the main creative driving force of this company. So I started kind of slow. I finished out that season. We got to December and I was dead. Like I was completely, I remember very little of any wedding that I shot in October. November started to slow down, and December I had a New Year's Eve wedding that I remember I specifically told myself that's the last New Year's Eve wedding I ever shoot.
Right, once you get to a certain stage in your career, you can check off Halloween wedding, New Year's Eve wedding, Christmas Day wedding. You can kind of go, okay, I've done that. Now I can check it off and let the young kids going crazy with that.
Oh my, yeah. I remember that year I put my assistant, because we were doing a 10-hour package with 3 additional hours of coverage for one cinematographer. Right. And that day, it was my friend Jason who was my assistant that day. And I was like, hey man, so you're going to stay 3 extra hours and I'm going to go home at 9 because I'm about to fall asleep, and I'm going to personally give you some money as a thank you on top of your hourly rate because you're doing me a huge favor. So, okay, see you later. Bye.
Right.
And I left, and he got great footage out of it, which is amazing. I mean, he's an amazing cinematographer. And it was funny that next couple of months, I kind of developed this style. I came up with the name. I slowly let some of my friends that were photographers know, friends that I worked with personally that I didn't work with a whole lot at this company because, as you know, the company that I'm talking about, we worked with the same kind of photographers a lot of the times. So I would work with, Sarah from White Clump Photography, Michelle from White Clump Photography, I would work with Sam and Sean over at Mirage and people like that. So, some of these people that I developed close personal relationships with out of working relationships, I kind of let slip that, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I tried to be as above board about it as possible and let that company know, when I decided when I decided I wasn't going to renew my contract, that I was going to leave and kind of start my own little small boutique 20 wedding films a year company. And I started getting referrals almost immediately. And that was the point where I realized that I could do this. It was something that I'd always kind of been like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if people want me to do this. I don't know if I'm, we're all self-conscious. We're all artists. we're all our own biggest critics. So I was like, maybe people don't like me as much as they say that they do. And, maybe that's just people being nice on the day.
Or maybe they don't like you as much as they liked you when they realized they were not going to pay you as much before as they're going to pay you now.
Right. So when I started getting referrals from people almost immediately. It was amazing. And then that was a whole learning curve on how to sell, because I didn't do a lot of the sales stuff at my old company. I did a lot of the
check the boxes, right? Just check the boxes,
creative stuff,
right?
So like handling sales and making sure that, like, the communication, I was on top of my communication, I was on top of my organization, that I didn't forget about meetings, that I didn't do, that I didn't double book myself, because that's all you need in the first day in your first year is to forget about a wedding, like I was just
in real quick.
Yeah. I was just shooting one 2 weeks ago where the makeup artist completely forgot, just didn't show, no show. And it's like, how can, there's no way that us as photographers or videographers could have that happen once and continue.
You would never be in business ever again. Well, and I think it goes to that too. You're a perfect example of, okay, when I was working with this other company, I actually got to go out and I got to go out and shoot. I got to do my passion. When you become a business owner and your name is on this, all of a sudden now you're cleaning the toilet, you're answering the phone. You're like, wait, I got to do this. I got to do this. You're just looking forward to the weekend where you actually be behind the camera and do what you love. And I think,
oh my God,
I think if you talk to a florist, it's the same way. It's like everything I have to do Monday through Friday leads up to the fact I get to deliver flowers, or I get to actually play my guitar, or I get to be the caterer. It's all the other things that people forget. So it's mindful that while we all know that working for ourselves has its perks, it also has a lot of things that are hard and make life work balance difficult. But I think by now, David, that the reward of working for yourself and being able to deliver a product that is solely you and your stance is just invaluable, and it just makes life worth living. And I think by now you've also realized that you're still having to tell people, hey, I'm really sorry I can't be your cinematographer, because you are already booked for somebody else. So that's going to be something that happens throughout your career because you're just that good. So tell our listeners.
But they don't book me thinking they like, I don't have to tell clients that I'm not going to be their cinematographer. And that's the more important thing for me. Exactly. Like, I'll have to turn down people from time to time, but like, I actually got asked recently. I had somebody come up to me and potentially want to like invest in Coterie because they'd seen the work that I had done. And they were like, like, we want you to hire, other cinematographers. We want you to hire editors. And like, how many weddings can you take in a year? And it was like, no, man, that's not what I want. I just left a company that did that. Like, I left it because I didn't want that stigma. I didn't want to be a huge house like that. I wanted to be small. I wanted to be in charge of all of it. Like, eventually, may I offer an associate cinematographer position? Maybe in 2022, in 2023.
Right now, you just gotta breathe. You gotta let your creativity breathe, and you also, I think it's good for all of us creatives to, hey man, I'm actually doing this. I mean, I know I can do it now. So then you already know you can teach. You've already been in that role. So yes, please don't grow too fast, and please don't become one of those wedding mills. Tell our listeners how you named your company, what it means, and then we'll dive a little bit into where the industry is with cinematography. But let everybody know how you came up with this name for your company.
Yeah, it's not super cool. So my company's name is Coterie Creative. I had never really wanted to have David Skaggs Films. I never wanted it to be David Skaggs Productions. Like, I had that when I was in college, and I knew that the team that I was going to be building, the people that I was going to be working with, deserve just as much credit as I do. So I didn't want people to be like, oh yeah, we hired David Skaggs to be our cinematographer. I knew that I had, I had cinematographers like my friends Alex and my friend Tyler. Like, these people all work with me side by side, and their effort and their skill is just as much a credit to Coterie's success as mine. So I knew that I wanted it to feel like a team effort. So I loved the word creative. Any company that I'd followed, a good friend of mine, his name is Brett Hoy. His company is Hoy Creative, and I loved the way that creative felt. It didn't feel like productions. It didn't feel like films. I just loved that. So I knew that I wanted something that sounded good and rolled off the tongue. So I knew I wanted something with a C or a K. So I remember I was sitting at the St. Louis, at Forest Park Country Club, and I was eating dinner at a wedding, and I went to synonyms and I just Googled teamwork. I Googled team, and Coterie came up, and Coterie means a select group of people who are all aiming towards the same goal. And I loved that because I had said multiple times that every vendor on a wedding day, even if they're all different companies, we're all on the same team. We're all aiming to create the best product for our client. Right. And our client is the bride and the groom. So if you go into it without that teamwork aspect, then the only person who's going to suffer, like nobody's going to gain from that. You're going to suffer. The videographer is going to suffer. The photographer is going to suffer. The client's going to suffer. The DJ is going to suffer. Like there's no point in going at this antagonistically. So like I always make a point whenever I walk in to offer to help the photographer whatever they need. I tell the DJ straight up, like, hey, I used to work for a company that had DJs in its employee. Like I understand how this stuff works. If you need any help at any point, let me know. Like if there's anything that I can do, and I'll do that. So Coterie to me was, number one, my team is all aiming to create the same goal. And then the whole vendor team is aiming to create, we're going towards the same goal. So that's kind of where that came from.
But we have to be a wedding day team. We all sink, we all rise together, and we all have to work together. And I think that brings us to a very good question that we've talked a little bit, and we talked a little bit on pre-recording up, before we started recording, but allude, if you can, to the fact of the importance of working with the photographer. We're just going to talk photography video right for the moment. The importance of talking and how it's valuable that we have to work together. I mean, I said I shoot the stills and you shoot the moving. Collectively, we're delivering a product of a story that these guys are going to cherish for years and years and years. Not just for them, but for the families. And in doing so, when they see a great collaborative effort, we can get referred together a lot. And then we do become that team, even though we're two separate entities. But then you add in that florist or that DJ. And then pretty soon people go, man, all 9 people, 10 people that were on this wedding today, man, what a rock star team. And they made it all effortless. So when you allude to the fact that you're the videographer, cinematographer, how important is that to a couple that they hire a professional videographer that does not do photography as well to keep them separate?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know a bunch of people who have photography, videography teams. I work for a couple of them actually. And I have no desire to start a photo branch of Coterie. Photography, it's something that I can do. And if somebody were to call me up and be like, David, oh my God, I'm in dire need. My assistant photographer got into a car wreck and she's going to the hospital. Can you grab your camera for 6 hours and come and meet me at this park and take some photos? Yeah, totally. I could do that. I'll step in and help out. But I have no desire to start taking my own photography clients because for 2 reasons. Number one, I understand how a camera works, but there's a whole other aspect. Photography and videography are so different. Like it's just, I mean, it's like comparing driving a Toyota Corolla to an 18-wheeler. Exactly. Yeah, it's driving. Sure, you push on the gas and the car or the vehicle goes. But there's so many different things that are different. So it's number one that, and it's number two, I get so many referrals from photographers who enjoy working with me that I don't want them to think that I'm going to potentially steal any business, and I just don't want to do that.
And I allude on that. I think while I agree it's stealing business to a form. What I find, and again, I have 37 years in this industry, and photography has changed, videography has changed. But what I don't like happens, and it happens rarely to me now because, I can be the big B sometimes, and I'm really fight for my clients. And we got to
do an argument on the first wedding we shot together.
Exactly. And I want my clients to have the best experience. So when I say, I want you to hire a videographer that is just that. I want your focus to be on that. I don't want you worrying about, let me add these stills and I'll feed them in, because now that's not a cinema to me. That's not a film to me. If you're adding, that's a slideshow. And
exactly.
And we just have 2 separate mindsets. And yes, you and I, because we're both creative and we're both proactive, you and I right off the bat, we're like, hey, look, this is your line. You stay in it. This is mine. And you did cross the line and I crossed back over the line. But at the end, to this day, that particular wedding, they still show that video. They still show the stills. I still do work for that family. And they loved it because they automatically said, here's 2 people that are going to fight to give us the best product of the 2 things that are going to last longer than anything on that day. So,
right.
So you have to have that communication, and you can't be afraid to talk. I'm like you. I walk up to the videographers and say, hey, look, How can I help you? How can you help
Yep.
me? Let's have success. And that's the good thing about that. So I'm glad that you're saying that you just want to be the videographer side, cinema side of that, because again, you're in St. Louis there with enough talented still people. And we all know.
Oh my God, there's so many.
And it's oversaturated like crazy, but we also know those horror stories of, hey, this is my husband who's just really holding a camera and pressing the button and you're not going to see any of that. So we all, and I think couples are getting smarter, and I think couples are realizing, and again, I think couples, this generation of couples are looking to people like you. They don't want a videographer. They want somebody like you that is a filmmaker and a cinematographer. And
that's that's the main thing that I tell people is like, I'm a cinematographer by trade. Like I can shoot whatever anybody needs me to shoot. I do a lot of corporate work. I do a lot of commercial work on top of weddings. Weddings are my first love, obviously, and that's where I want to be eventually. But I mean, sometimes like on a Wednesday, if I'm not editing anything, like, yeah, I'll go and take a corporate shoot, something like that.
Right.
But I'm a wedding filmmaker. That's what I try to do. Like my products, they're not music videos. They're not montages set to Ben Rector. They're mixing in and out of different tracks. They're using different audio tracks. They're using different parts of the day to tell the story of the day. It's to tell the best story of the day and to make the best film you could possibly make for your client. That's the difference, in my opinion, between a videographer and a cinematographer or a filmmaker. And I think that's so important that if that's what you want, then to find the right person. You know, and going back to what you said about working with the photographers and how important that is, I think that's the single most important thing of the day. And I think that shows from the amount of people that refer me from time to time, like, and will send people my name. It's because I think I even said it to you when I used to train cinematographers. I told them that I have a little mini speech that I say, if I've never worked with the photographer before, if I've never met them before, that I tell them literally the first thing that I say after I say, hi, my name is, look, I'm here to let you know, like, I'm the videographer. Like, it's your show. You're the photographer. You're going to be the one who's going to dictate how this day goes. I will shoot around you. Don't worry about me. If there's ever a moment where I feel like I want to get a specific shot, I will let you know discreetly.
Right.
And be like, hey, I'd like to try and get the shot. I'm not going to jump in front and be like, excuse me, can we get the whole wedding party to go? Like,
can we do that all over again? Now let's do that again. Okay, cut. Let's do that again. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll tell the photographer discreetly, like, hey, I want to use this setup. If that's cool, it'll take me like a minute, 2 minutes, maybe. And then if they're like, and another thing is like, I shoot exclusively on Canon prime lenses. Like, I love my EF mounts, my 35, my 85, my 135. I love my 24. I love those. So, and a majority of the photographers that I work with shoot Canon as well. So that helps me because I tell them like, hey, I understand what you're probably shooting when you're shooting it. So you will not have to tell me to get out of your shot very often. Right. Like, if I am one step over, I'm sorry about that. I actually have joked, there's a photographer in town named Mike Cassametes, who's just one of the most talented people I've ever seen. And he shoots so much film. It's the most nerve-wracking thing in the world for me, because I'm like, oh man, if I'm one step in, that's a $3.25 photo that I just messed up if he's shooting it almost all on film. But yeah, like I tell him that straight away. And I'm like, look, this is your show. I'm not going to be one of those videographers that gets in your way, that just does 360-degree turns around the couple, that does all these super cheesy things. I'm not going to be weird. I'm not going to be creepy. Like, I'm here to make the best film that I can possibly make, and I know how to do that and work alongside of a photographer. I don't kick people out to get my shots.
Right.
So,
I think people see that when they come to look. So how are couples now looking? How are you presenting your work to couples? Because it is distinctive. And again, we'll link back in the show notes of how to be able to go find David. But if you can, how do you present that? And is that for the engaged couples that are listening, how should they go about knowing that they want a videographer, or they want a cinematographer, or they want a filmmaker? Other than looking at styles, is it important? If video is important to them, they need to look here. Or if it's just something they want raw footage of, they need to look here. What's your niche, and why should people hire you for what you do?
Yeah. So my first thing is like, if you know you want a video, then you want a filmmaker. It's that simple. Like, if that's something like me, if I were to get married, I know that I want a wedding film. That's it. So like, you have to understand that, like, it's an investment, just like a photographer, just like florist, just like the venue. You know, if that's something that you want, then you want to find the right person and you want to set aside the money to do that. If you're 4 months from your event and you're like, hey, I've got an extra $1,200, you know, then that's where you look for a videographer. That's where you look for somebody young and hungry and new that maybe doesn't have as much experience and is able to take work for that kind of stuff. I mean, that's not to say that, like, I don't take work if I'm off. If I get a call on April 1st for a wedding on April 10th and I'm not doing anything that day, that I won't go and just, you know, take a gig for that. But, like, for me, it's, if you know that you want a video and you know when you're getting engaged and when you're planning that wedding, like, I want a wedding video, then you know that you need a film. You know you need a filmmaker, and you know you need to find somebody whose style matches what you're interested in. And for me, that's mood. My films, I say it all the time and I joke about it all the time, that things are about to get moody. And that's what I like to do. Like, I expose for the highlights. I utilize shadow. I utilize foreground objects. I shoot a lot on my 85, which gives me just amazing depth of field for portraits. And my images are darker than most. Like, the highlights are are perfectly exposed a lot of the times, and that sounded so cocky, and it wasn't intended to. But it's true. When you see your images, and again, you can expand on this, but when you see your images, it's like you were there, but you're telling it from, like, being, and I use this term loosely, a fly on the wall. Because earlier, like when you said, you're not jumping around. To me, that's a huge difference. I can just come, hold a camera, document what happens, walk around and do something. You're telling a story in a way that is cinema-like, in film-like. So you're dark and moody. That's something I want to talk about. That's what we're seeing now. Is that a trend that you like? Is that a style that you like? Or do you think that every cinematographer has their own style and couples need to look for that? I think that every cinematographer has their own style, obviously. I think that there is this kind of growing trend right now, and I think it's coming from the West Coast. Personally, there's a ton of Colorado and Utah and Southern California videographers, cinematographers right now that are really kind of pushing this, not darker in the sense of its tone, but darker in the sense of its images style, that I think is slowly making its way across the country. And I know that there's a wedding filmmaking couple here in St. Louis. They're Mike Dalton and his wife, Emily. Their company is called Films by Juniper, and their work is something that I absolutely adore because it's so niche and it's so interesting. They shoot a lot on, like, I think it's 16 millimeter is what they shoot. I mean, they shoot on actual film, and I think that's super cool. And to see filmmakers that are developing this style and adapting something from Colorado in Missouri, where we don't have mountains, we don't have that kind of background where you. And
that's what I was just going to ask you. How does you think that looks a little bit funny? Because we're seeing it here on the East Coast. I call it cigar stains, where on the photography world, it is an editing side. And I look at this and go, we are in this lovely Spanish moss. 90% of the time I'm coastal on the beach. And these things are coming back so dark, orange skin, very, 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 like I said, cigar stained. I have to really wonder, and again, the old 37-year doing this, I believe our job is to tell the truth. I think your job can be that you can elaborate on that. But I think as a photographer in the still, this is what I saw, this is what I captured. I think you as a cinematographer, filmmaker, have the luxury to enhance that, enlighten it, love on it a little bit more. So do you think that is looking weird to be in the middle of St. Louis with the arch behind it, where it looks like it's got the muted smoke coming through the arch, which we know is not happening?
Right. No, I don't think it's weird per se. I think when you add stuff that doesn't exist, it's odd.
Right.
But to document things in a different way, I don't think is weird. So, like, for example, like, I mean, I'll add light flares from time to time. I'll add fog if I'm shooting drone shots because it looks like a cloud, and I think that's kind of cool. And I'm not flying my drone through a cloud.
Right.
But when you actually, like, when you go in and you add parts to the video that didn't actually exist, that's when I think you're stopping the truth in a sense. So like I look at it as, like you said, a fly on the wall. I look at every wedding as almost as if it's a documentary. My job is to tell a story that does not exist yet through my images and through my editing.
It's happening live. It's happening as it unfolds. So you're doing it live, not a retake. You got to do it right now. And you're telling the story as it unfolds.
Exactly. And you have to find that story sometimes weeks later in the edit. You know, you're there to document in a cinematic way. You're not just there to capture what happened, you know, at least in my opinion. And I don't think that photographers do that either. Their job is to take something that sometimes may be a pretty boring location or a pretty boring moment of a day, and to find that emotion and bring out that emotion through their skills. We're all skilled people. We spent so much time and so much money and it's so much of our lives developing the skill that not everybody has.
Right.
You know, like
you can't teach how to see.
I love my mom. I love my mom to death, but man, sometimes if she'll take a photo of me, I've got to find a stranger to retake it.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, some people just can't use a photo, can't use a camera, and that's
they can't see. I don't think they can see, hey, this moment's getting ready to happen. I should be over there. And our job is to deliver all these authentic moments that happen in between. We all know that the things are going to happen, but I think our true job as artists and storytellers is to capture the in-between moments that you did not know happened, but so much tell your story about how you got to where you are today. And our job, whether it's in stills or moving, is to deliver that product at the end where they sit back and go, man, my day was really great. And you get to show it in a moving part that should move them to tears. And I show it in a still moment that they can hold up to their heart and go, wow, I can look at this every day, but I feel this, but then I can see this emotion. And that's what you do. And so when you do that, that comes to the cost issue. And we're not going to dive heavy into pricing on this, but I want you to kind of explain to listeners and the engaged couples that fight the fact to make the investment in a videographer, that not only is the person showing up, like you said, we have valuable equipment, our years of education, our years of doing this, our insurances, but not only do you work on that day, but you now have editing. So it is part of the process that goes into how you charge what you charge. So on your weddings that you do, how much editing are you doing? Do you allow your couples to pick and choose? What's a basic package that you're going to deliver? You show up, do a 5-minute trailer. Are you there all day? Kind of like, what's your role with your company and how you want to pursue that?
Yeah. So I have a couple of different packages. They depend on the length of the film. I have anywhere between 2 to 4 minutes as a teaser film. So that's a short. It gets little clips of things. Usually it's centered either on the officiant or the letters that the bride and the groom kind of write to each other. Those are what kind of tentpole the story. And then I have like a 4 to 6 minute or a 7 to 9 minute film. Those are my 3 different packages. And each package comes with the full ceremony, stuff like that. Just the standard stuff. You know, you're not going to watch it all the time. They're not going to go online, but everybody wants to, you know, grandparents still want to watch the ceremony. They, you know, all these kinds of things. The amount of I pretty much I have hours listed on my package, but they never are accurate. I mean, I spent a good friend of mine, I was in Sedalia this weekend shooting a friend's wedding, and he booked my 10-hour package, and I was there for 14 hours because of the way that the day was. Like, I'm not going to not get footage that I need for the film because my hours don't dictate it. Like, I was already there. Right. So I spent I shot from 8 o'clock in the morning until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, you know, and that was the day. That's the job.
That's telling a story. That's
right. That's what it needs. So like, I never freak out about that. I don't offer an 8-hour package just because it's not enough time. I don't think 8 hours is enough time for video. I know the photography, some people do 6-hour packages for photography but you know, who wants photos of themselves not in makeup? Like, nobody wants that. But I
was just going to come up and bring up that I personally think, and again, Bobby Brinkman's opinion, but we're having a candid conversation.
Yeah.
When I show up and you're just getting your makeup on, number one, we all know this, ladies, you guys don't go to the grocery store without putting makeup on. So why on the day do you want me to take a still photo of you without makeup on? I mean, it doesn't work. I personally feel that time of the morning is so much more suited for you guys. I mean, because you can do the creative hairspray or you can do the slow roll. I think that because I think it's a moving. I think in a still, it does great for the makeup people for an ad for them, a still. But
exactly.
I don't think it benefits the couple at all.
Who's going to print one of those photos out?
And it very seldom makes the album. But it's so important to set the story on the cinema, on the movie side of it.
And I use close-up lenses for those moments. Like, I very rarely shoot wide shots of, like, the bridesmaids sitting around a makeup table. You know, a lot of times I'm on my 85 and I'm getting a nice extreme close-up of the winged eyeliner or of, like you said, the hair going around the roller. I'll shoot in slow motion, stuff like that, to get these kinds of moments to where it's like, yes, this happened. And now we're on to this part of the day because
and again, that is and you can educate your couples because you've done this so long and you know the value. And I wish photographers, it's one of the things I wish they would learn. And if you work with a good videographer, or cinema photographer, you know that these filmmakers, that's their role. So thank heaven people are listening to me a little bit, and people take to what I say when I say, hey, I don't mind coming at that time. But it's best suited to have your video cinema person there to let them get that unobtrusive without me being around or even remotely doing something. Just like I feel that when we get to the reception, that really is your day too. So in essence, the videographer, cinema person should be there way further than me, because I think that when we get dancing and things like that, again, it's a moving. You can do slow-mo. You can hear the music. You can do all those things, and then of course the grand exit. So when you tell the story like that and you're editing, are you seeing that that's an editing style? Do you think that is a trend that's going to hang around for a while, that you'll need to keeping up with technology to be offering these different effects? Or do you kind of just feel with, Coterie, that you want it to be authentic and real and you'll do the best version of editing that based for your client's story that enhances it without going extreme?
It's so funny that you said the word authentic, because that is something that, like, I've been thinking about that for like the last 5 minutes. That is like the best way to describe the films that I make, is they're authentic to the day. Each one is different. No, I don't think, like, for example, right now. So I know there are people wondering what kind of equipment I shoot on. So I shoot on a Sony A7S II. That allows me to shoot 4K and 24 frames per second, for anybody who understands what that is. There are cameras out there that are DSLR and are mirrorless that shoot 4K in more frame rates, and 4K is becoming like a huge thing right now. It's just like drones. Like 3 years ago, nobody asked about drone videography. Nobody asked about drone photography. Nobody knew what they were. And then it's like overnight. Oh, I feel like overnight I get asked that every single sales. Do you have a drone? How many drones do you have? What drone do you have? Like, they know what drone I have. Like, and that's so shocking to me, because like I could go sit down with them and be like, yeah, so I use a Zoom H1 for audio recording, and I use a Zoom H6, and I have a Rokinon 35mm with a 1.5 f-stop, and blah, 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 blah. You'll say stuff like that, and you could watch their eyes glass over. I mean, I watch it with my family.
How much? Yeah, then they go, how much?
Right. But when they ask about drones, they're like, oh, you have the Mavic Pro? We have the Mavic Pro 2 at home, and we just use it to fly around our house. And it's like, oh, all right, well, like, can I borrow it? Can I use it for your wedding film? Like, what's, like they understand that kind of stuff. And I think that it's a mixed bag of what technology is going to stick and what technology is a fad. So like 360-degree cameras. I remember a year and a half ago, those things were all the rage, and people were like, we have to have a 360-degree camera during our ceremony. And I'm like, no, you don't. That's going to go away. No one's going to care, because no one's going to stand there with their phone and spin in a 360-degree circle to see Uncle Bob sitting in the 6th row. Nobody cares about that.
Because Uncle Bob has a camera in front of his face. Right. Uncle Bob anyway.
I picked the wrong name for that one. But,
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, nobody cares about that kind of stuff. So for me, it's adjusting what will make my films better. So when Sony makes a camera that shoots 4K and all the frame rates, I will invest in a better camera. But like, until, like, I don't think I'm not going to invest in fads until I'm sure that they're going to make my films better. So to me, a 360-degree camera isn't going to make my film more cinematic. It's not going to make it more impactful. It's just a fad. It is there specifically so somebody could be like, well, we'll bring a 360-degree camera for $300 more. And that's not something that I want to do.
All right, just because you can doesn't mean you should. We all, yeah.
Exactly. However, like I'll buy smoke bombs and I'll use some smoke bombs in some shots. Like I'll totally do that kind of stuff.
And your photographer will thank you for it.
Right. So a lot of times I buy the smoke bombs off my friend Sunny. She's a photographer and she gets smoke bombs all the time. And it's like, hey, I'm going to a wedding. Can I like Venmo you $75? Like, and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like for me, it's just if the technology increases and it'll make my films better, then I'll invest. If the technology is just to be something additional, then I'm going to hold off on it. Drones made my films better. So I invested in drones. 4K, that allows me to punch in closer on a 1080 video. So that I invested in. But I'm not going to invest in a camera that shoots 4K across all the frame rates right now because I'm not turning in projects in 4K. Nobody's watching these wedding films in 4K. They're watching it in 1080. So I'm not going to invest in something right now that is just an investment for investment's sake. So,
right. And so exactly. And so in doing that, I mean, like I said, I think drones fit in well with somebody of your talent. I don't think Uncle Bob flying over. It's just a whole different look.
Oh, I can't even imagine how mad I would be if some guest brought a drone. I'd be like, what is going on?
And you're like, and everybody's looking up at the sky and you're like, what the heck is going on? I can't even hear I can't hear the officiant now. And the person who hooked up the microphone is going, oh my God, I'm picking up. And it's just, it's go away, go away, go away. So, but that brings me up into the part of the question is, how are these millennials really looking at your films? I mean, how do you think people are viewing these films, and do you think that's going to change in the next couple of years or so?
I really don't know, actually. So I do a lot of marketing. I'm on the Knot, obviously. I utilize Facebook. I utilize my personal Facebook as well. So I post screen grabs of a lot of my films. That's one of the main things that I do for teasers for the upcoming films. I release my films both on Vimeo and on Facebook. I actually upload the videos straight to Facebook as opposed to sharing the Vimeo link through Facebook, because now Vimeo, for some reason, it doesn't stream on Facebook's page anymore, like on your actual homepage. Like it'll actually redirect you to Vimeo's page, and that bothers me. Like as just a consumer, I don't like being taken to another page. Like if I want to watch a video, I want it to play on the page that I'm already on. So I upload my films directly to Facebook, and then I upload them directly to Vimeo as well, so I can host them on my website and stuff like that.
And so that's how your couples, when you deliver it, that's how your couples are going to be able to share it with their family and friends. And is that how you think most couples, I mean, I know they're probably looking on their phone, but the quality between Facebook and looking on your phone, and we all know that everybody's monitors and phones are different, but is that how you think, most of your couples, once they get it from you, is that the way you deliver? Is it making it easier for your clients to share and be able to see the videos and share more? Is it something you're doing that makes it easier?
I think so. I think so. So I think a majority of people watch it via mobile, because I'm 30 years old, and a majority of my internet usage is not sitting on my laptop. It's not sitting at my iMac. It's scrolling on my iPhone. So like, I think that a majority of the people are watching these videos on their phones. So the way that I deliver mine is they get flash drives with all of the videos on it, not the raw, but all the edited, meaning like the ceremony, speeches, dances, wedding film, whatever they get as their deliverable, all comes on a flash drive. And then what I do is I'll upload their film to Vimeo privately with a password protected, and I'll send it to them. And I'll be like, hey, here's your wedding film. Let me know if you guys love it. If you do, I can make this link public, and you could send it to all your friends and family who don't have Facebook. And then if you love it, I will upload it to Facebook as well, tag you in it, and then you guys can share it straight from my Coterie Facebook page. Gotcha. And then I think that works out well on both ends because, number one, it drives traffic, obviously, to the Coterie Facebook page. And then they get to see the passion that I put into the post about the film. They get to, if anybody has any questions about like what we use, that all goes in there. I tag my cinematographers. I post the music that I'm using, stuff like that. And then the Vimeo page, the Vimeo link can get sent around. I've sent it to venues, stuff like that, where they could host it on their website. Like, for example, I just finished one at Little Piney Lodge out in Herman, Missouri, and I sent that over to John and Julie there, and they emailed me back that they love it, and they're going to put it on their Facebook page and all that kind of stuff. And So like, that's how I think most people watch it right now, is through their phones.
Right.
Now I'm not going off of any sort of proof. Like I don't have a study. I just know how I watch and how I utilize the internet at 30 years old. I feel like it's probably similar.
Right,
Now,
and now you can even stream. Now you can plug in your phone and put it on a TV if you want to show Susie or Grandma Susie when she comes over. So I mean, there are ways to get it on your TV and look at it. And you have your flash drives and smart TVs. Right. But I just think that's one of the things that have always, I think, back in the day, I don't want to get a VHS tape. I don't want to get a CD and have to plug it in.
Oh my God, I hate it.
That's another reason why I think we've evolved so much. And it's because people like you that are talented, that are showing why you can have a creative wedding film that doesn't just look like somebody on a tripod in the corner, hit the play button. So
exactly.
I don't want to dive too deep into it, because I think, listeners, what we're going to do is I figure was going to happen, because I knew David was so packed of information, is we'll wrap up here in a few minutes, but I'm going to give you a bonus episode when David's episodes air. So we're going to take the questions that you guys have sent in, and we got like 3 more just in while we've been chatting. So we're going to take those questions over, but and I'm going to record this separately, so that way you guys can have a whole separate thing of just 10 or 12 questions with David, since you guys are so interested. But I wanted to kind of end on 2 notes here, and we'll talk a little bit in the next episode about it. But you talked about looking on the iPhone, your generation, and right now, most of the weddings that we do, all anybody knows is the iPhone. This is a generation who very seldom looks at a TV. This generation has been born with an iPhone in their hand. They grew up playing with it. When they were 5 years old, 2 months old, 3 months old, they had a video camera or phone in their hand looking at videos. So we all know how good that looks. So I know, as a photographer, I sometimes think, people are just accepting what an iPhone photo looks like when they take a snap. So is it decreasing my value or what I have to offer? And we talked earlier in the episode about, no, that has to go with the experience. But it's the same with you. There are some cameras right out here now that are costing, or phones that are costing $1,500, that are sometimes more expensive than the gear that you and I are using. Mm-hmm. Why should somebody invest in David when I can just get Uncle Bob to hold that iPhone and press play?
Because it's the emotion. It's the care that your professional puts into it. I have yet to meet somebody in the wedding industry who really makes a living in the wedding industry who does it because the money is good.
Right.
That's not why I've never met anybody that does that. The people who make a living in the wedding industry, even if they have side hustles, even if they work in commercial videography, even if they work and they do newborn photo sessions and family photo sessions, people that work in the wedding industry do it because they love to see the reaction on their clients' faces, and they love to see their hard work create these emotions in people that you don't get elsewhere. I've turned in projects, corporate projects for people that I was really happy with doing the edit. And I get I'll send it over to them, and I'll get a message back saying, "Hey, looks great. Thanks. We'll send us an invoice and we'll hit you in 6 weeks." And it's like, all right, cool. Great. Happy Wednesday. Have a good day. And then I'll send a bride a wedding film that I love, and I'll get almost a doctorate dissertation back from her about how much she loves it and how she cried watching it and how her mom just can't stop watching it. And even her husband will send me a message, and that's the reason. It's not the money. It's not the work. It's the emotions that we get to give other people, that we get to share with somebody who was a stranger at one point. And you've become such an important part of one of the most important days of their life. And you get to help them. We get to help them relive that a year from now on their 1-year anniversary, 10 years from now on their 10-year anniversary. I don't have any clients right now, as far as I'm aware, that have kids that are old enough to watch their wedding film, but eventually I will, and we cannot forget
that this is such a privilege for the easy part of, we are privileged to witness this, but somebody at a wedding is going to pass away. The products and services that you and I provide will remind them long after that person has passed away how much they were loved, how important they were. And it's your films and my stills that they can cry and look at, that when they're mad at their spouse fighting, they can put that on and remember. It's a daily reminder that, my gosh, I had a day that started all this. And when you do have 2 and 3 kids later, you go back and say, but this is our story and how it started. That's the privilege that we have. We're in the service industry. We're never going to become millionaires because we are selling emotion. And what we do in the wedding industry is vitally important, and it is a privilege. We're not solving cancer. We're not saving people's lives. But I know in my 37 years, and I know you feel this way too, that at the end of a wedding, when I drive home, I know I could do better. I know I probably missed something. There's more that I want to give to that person, and has nothing to do with my paycheck. It's because I wanted to give more. When you then deliver that gallery or that film and you get that emotion, you sit back and go, yes, I did not know you, but look how much I know you. Because as a stranger, we're able to let them open up on their own. We're not there. We don't care about their family drama. We don't care how they got there. Our job is to show why they're here today and how they got it. And that's what filmmakers do. And that's why you're so valuable in this industry. And that's why I do believe that this generation is going to understand the importance of it, because they spent so much time seeing video on a phone more than a couple years ago, more than even 5 years ago. The video stuff wasn't happening. Now it's just a way of life. I want to know something, I Google a video. I want to see something, I Google a video. And I'll be honest, people share now their wedding films far more than they do, hey, here's my top 10 from my gallery photographer. People are showing your films more than they're showing my stills. And it's my favorite thing to hear from a potential client is, I have no idea who this person is, but I'm bawling at their wedding film. Right. And I've heard that a couple of times from people just having watched the films on my website, having watched the films on my Facebook. They're just like, I don't even know who this person is. And your film makes me feel like I know who they are. And that's the best thing for me, is to, and that's how people should go about hiring us. And I have it on my website, top 5 things you should be looking for, not just in me, but top 5 things you should be looking for when you want to hire a photographer or cinematographer. And it's, can you see yourself in their footage, and can you see yourself in their stills? Can you see yourself having these people tell your story? When you look at these photos that you don't know exactly what you said, can you see yourself there? And if you can do so, then that's whatever site you're on, that's who you need to hire. That's the person that you need to book. So we're going to end right here, guys, on this section. David, remind everybody how they can find you on social media. And again, Tina will put this on the show notes, but remind everybody where they can find you. Thank you for your time. And listeners, I know I got these questions. I've got 12 of them already wrote down. We're going to hit it. So, after this episode airs, we're going to give you a bonus a couple days later. And throughout this time, follow David on his links he's going to give you. Feel free to ask questions there. Follow along in the Be Fabbo Podcast on Instagram, and we'll fire some questions off there as well. You can still send some questions in. David can answer those a little bit later. But thanks, David, for joining us. A wealth of information. I hope all the listeners are inspired to not be afraid to take the steps to follow your creative heart. You're doing it with integrity. You're doing it with intention. And this is why, my friend, you will be successful for many, many, many years, because you're absolutely Fabbo. So, David, where can people find you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Oh my God, I'm so bad at taking compliments. Thank you. So you guys can find me. My website is CoterieCreative.com. That's COTERIE creative.com. I'm on Instagram at Coterie_creative, or my personal one, which I share little links and photos from films from time to time, is at David B. Skaggs. And then it's Facebook.com/Coterie Creative.
Awesome. All right, listeners, you heard it there. Make sure you follow along. And we're going to end here, and then we're going to go back and record some of your questions. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. Everybody have a Fabbo week, and just continue to be Fabbo. Remember, it's a privilege to serve and do what you do. We're all valuable. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We hope these conversations will take you into your wedding weekend with a little more confidence, proud of what you do and how you serve your clients. Maybe you even picked up a business tip or two. Till next time, be Fabbo.